Hello, and welcome to another episode of Jerks at Work. This is Creating Cultures That Outperform. We're on episode 21 of Jerks at Work, the bottleneck. It's amazing, Terry, that we've had 21 of these episodes and we still have a lot of jerks to
I
go,
know.
which is
I know.
amazing. The number of jerks at work, we're over here on the third one down on the second column. We're going to move on to the always busy, do nothing. You can see we've got a lot of good ones coming, without a doubt. And these are all real personality types that we've worked with. Some are much more annoying than others, but we've all seen the bottleneck. And there are many reasons people become bottlenecks. The worst one is they want to control everything, and all
Yes.
roads lead to them, and they start to acquire more and more power and control, and they don't know how to get out of the middle, but they love that power they get from making you wait or being the one they have to come to, because it makes them somebody. They
Yeah.
want visibility into everything. That's who they are.
Yeah. They're trying to produce a good quality product, but
Hmm.
they don't realize that creating this bottleneck is really reducing the quality of the product
Yeah.
because you get great quality not by just having one person look at things, but by having multiple people input. And so when you kind of serve as that judge and jury of what's good and what's bad, you really do leave yourself in a vulnerable position when it comes to innovation and creativity, because you can't think of everything on your own. And in those cases, you really do need other people to weigh in and to have some thoughts. And so this bottleneck just slows down work in such a way that it really does not create the best products in the end.
Yeah, let's say they're in a program office and everything runs through them, in terms of programs. Somebody comes to them with a program change, and, like it says over here, what they do wants to get into every detail. So they're not
Mhm.
going to understand everything about every program, but they
That's
end up
right.
not understanding their limitations. They dig into every detail they want to understand so they can be part of the decision, instead of getting the right people together and saying, let me know what you decided. They become the bottleneck because they don't know how to really handle that kind of scope.
Yeah.
Um,
They
yeah.
become
So
that single point of failure, right?
yeah,
So the team can only be as good as they are, which is a sad statement, right? You want the
right.
team to equally, everyone brings their strengths to the table so that the team can be better. But you actually end up becoming that single point of failure, and you really lose all of the momentum that you could have had by having more people involved.
Yeah, and I think the slide absolutely nails it. Right, they hold decision making
Yeah,
forward too tight. They don't let go. They create dependency rather than developing people and showing them what to
that's
do,
right.
getting them together, saying, "Hey, here's how you got to make this decision." And they're that single point of failure. But on the right over here, it's like, "Hey, I'm protecting quality. I'm just making sure it's done right. Everyone needs my approval." So, these people are real. I've seen bottlenecks. They're always in one of these program offices, or the worst one was going in to get approvals on, acquisition of new things. And we had to go to this group that controlled that. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And they have a big impact because they hold everything up. Everybody pays the price.
Yes.
And, it's a great image, this guy with the stacks of stuff waiting for him over here on the right, and everybody over there on the left just sitting there going, what the hell?
Yeah. This whole productivity, innovation, morale, all these things just take a hit. Accountability,
Yep.
they really take a hit. And in this time that we're in, where things are just changing so rapidly, you cannot afford to have a bottleneck. You
You can't.
cannot afford to have everything depending on one person. You need for your decisions to move quickly. The experimentation can move quickly, because remember, we're failing fast so that we can learn. So the teams, you don't want them to become risk averse. You want them to take the risks, monitor calculated risk, educated risk, but you want people to take those risks and be able to learn from what the mistakes, whatever they are, because people are going to make the mistakes, right? Because you're taking some risks, you're stepping out into new territory. You can't afford to have a bottleneck slowing things down to a snail's pace. You really do need to move pretty quickly through those learning cycles, those iterations of learning, so that you can get to the finish line faster. But if you've got a bottleneck, it's just going to slow down the productivity. Everything is going to take longer. Deadlines are going to slip. Opportunities are going to be missed. It's just the nature of the beast when you have a bottleneck.
And, you know, here's the problem. You know, this is a set of governance mechanisms that one person is controlling. And in most companies, they don't really have a good process to do the continuous improvement on these governance mechanisms, because you've got to get together once a quarter and do a review and say what's working well, what isn't, what can we do to improve this. And you would uncover the fact that either the person's the problem or the governance mechanism is designed wrong, something. But generally, it's these people are the problem because they love having that power.
Yeah.
So Tara, what do you think you should do with people like this?
You know, you really do have to clarify decisions right up front. You've got to define those approval thresholds. You cannot let people just kind of take forever with how long they're going to take to review things. You can't just leave them in this infinite loop. You've got to set some hard and fast deadlines and hold them accountable for meeting those deadlines. You have to push them to do the work. It's okay to get their opinion, to make sure that things are documented properly, that they have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted, but you cannot leave them in this infinite amount of time loop where they can just take forever to get things done. You really do have to set that expectation right up front. And you cannot let them hold the decisions. You cannot let them be the final approval. They don't have to review everything. Does not have to be all centralized and under their control. You don't have to have this dependency on them. You really do have to sever the cord. You have to disconnect them from feeling like they have to own every piece and every part. You want their input. It's valuable input because they do have a lot of information.
Oh, yeah.
But you cannot let that person be the hinge that determines when the door opens and closes. You really do have to set some guidelines and some rules for this person to help bring them onto the schedule so that things are done in a timely manner. And if they don't meet the deadlines, we will proceed without your input. Has to be the next step. You can't let that person just keep holding the team hostage with their review.
We'll let you know what we decided. You know, sometimes
right.
It does come to that. I've seen that many times. Look, we've got to move on. You're not aware of, you don't care about our deadlines. And this is why you got to measure cycle times and delay. Encourage them to delegate out to teams of people to make the decision. There are lots of ways to get the job done. It doesn't mean they have to do it, but they love that control. And that's not leadership, which is what it says. So they are always in the way. And I think, you know, allowing them to be there without actually coming in and doing a review. What are the strengths and weaknesses of this governance mechanism? How can we optimize this? What are the guidelines? Do they have a charter that defines what the expectation is, what the turnaround time is, what they've got to get done, and have them report on how they're doing? Because you don't want to feed that dependency. And, you know, boy, when you have people like this copying them on stuff, which kind of gives the opportunity to go, hey, yeah, glad you reached out to me. Yeah, let's meet and talk about what you need. You know, pretty soon you're stuck in there in the nest, you know, with them. It's terrible.
Yeah. It just reinforces their thoughts that, you know, nobody can do anything without me.
Yeah.
They always need my input. They always need my final approval. It just reinforces that behavior.
Oh, you get bosses who reinforce what they're doing and saying, hey, you know, boy, you really got tight control over this stuff. I love it. Instead of the boss digging in and seeing that these people are the bottleneck, they're a problem. And it's not heroism to have this huge amount of stuff and be working overtime and putting in lots of hours, but never helping the place move forward. So they are just a huge problem, and you just don't want to reward or reinforce anything they do. It's just, they're a nightmare.
Yeah. You got to push them towards results. That's the key takeaway from there. You know, you really do have to push them towards results and help them to see that one person cannot do it all. You know, these bottlenecks are creating costs that are killing morale. That's the big
laying
cost.
out those, defining those costs and the impacts. Yeah, from the teams of what was the impact of the lack of decision making, right?
Yeah, you've really got to pay attention to your morale, because when you start having those frustrated workers, when people slow down to the snail's pace, they get frustrated, They don't like having to rely on the one person. That's going to cost you more in the long run than anything else. When your culture starts taking hits, it's very hard to recover from those hits. So you want to catch that soon and modify quickly. This isn't about just allowing for more destruction. You really do want to nip that in the bud pretty quickly, because this isn't about just having people sit in a chair of authority. It's one thing to have a person that is an advisor, a SME, that has this knowledge, but you really don't want them to be the gatekeeper. You don't want them to insist that everything runs through them. Like, it just is going to create problems in the
You don't
long
want to
run.
authorize them to be in that role at all.
That's
And,
right.
if you're a good leader, if you have a governance mechanism that's not working, you should hear about it relatively quickly and get in there and figure out what could we do to optimize the flow here
Yeah.
and work
You've
with
got
that
to
person,
remove
coach
those
them.
roadblocks.
Yeah, and coach them. Maybe they could get better. Maybe, you as the leader, you could set a much faster pace and show them how to actually move throughput higher. I think
Yeah.
there are a lot of things they could do, but I've seen these bottlenecks in place for a long time, and nobody does anything about it. And so they're a huge issue in many companies. They really are, because they like that power.
Yeah.
That's my thinking on it. So hey, we're moving on next week, episode 22. The always busy do nothing, often the busiest person in the place. And so we're going to talk about who they are and what do you do about them. We're here every Wednesday, 3 o'clock with another episode. I hope you could join us next week, and we'll see you then.
Yes.